I was supposed to have a very theoretical speech, interesting one, I must admit. I had prepared for days and days, but I'm going to give up. It would be in Portuguese, a long and boring speech, although a deep one, you may guess. And so, let me first of all thank the Gulbenkian Foundation for receiving us here. As usual, you are really very, 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 very nice, and you understood the meaning, the deep meaning of this conference. Thank you, dear President Isabel Mota. Then, of course, second word for President Jorge Sampaio. He's fantastic. He says, I'm beloved. It's not true. He's beloved. Not only in Portugal, but all over the world. I will never succeed in that. Well, yes, you are. You are. And you know you are. And it is well deserved. Not only because you had the idea, but it's easy to have ideas. But then you had the determination and the courage. And there you have the result of your platform. It's not only just a Portuguese idea for Portugal or for Europe. It is a universal idea, as the Mr. Minister for Foreign Affairs has just stressed. And in that sense, there is a change of mentality. We are no longer trying to face the challenge of crises, of emergencies. We are dealing with realities that will become unhappily normal in our lives. Normal in our lives. Of course, we would rather have all the wars over and speak of the aftermath and speak of the next future and medium long-term future in many regions of the world, most of them neighboring regions. But we know that migrations and unhappily refugees will be there for very long. So there is a change. It's no longer looking for just, although very necessary, an emergency mechanism. We need it, a rapid one, but we need it knowing it will be for the long term, for the long term. And it requires that the public opinions understand it and accept it. I'm very proud of the Portuguese example, not only because I'm President of Portugal, but because the Portuguese were an example, not a single example. You mentioned the presence of the Secretary General of the United Nations, the presence of the German Chancellor. There, we had two other examples of people that understood immediately the meaning of what was happening, and that it was necessary to have a quick answer to those challenges. But in the case of Portugal, there is a national consensus concerning migrations and refugees. When we have a strong candidate for an international migration organization, it's the outcome of this consensus. The name of Mr. Antonio Vitorino, not just he was my best student ever, and I had 25,000 students, so you may imagine how really brilliant he is, but it is the result of a consensus. From the far right to the far left, one understood we needed a national response. And Europe would need an European response. Unhappily, difficult to get the consensus. But we need a common migration policy in Europe. And we need a universal sharing of experiences concerning this common problem. It's a world problem. It will be a world problem. No use of disguising it. It's there. It must be solved. It must be addressed. And I'm very proud of the Portuguese example. We had here, you know, we received here 1,000, almost 500 refugees. We could listen to their statements. 4 of them. I've met several others throughout the country. There they are. People that had to, in a sense, restart their lives in another country, not speaking that tongue, that different language, having to get used to a different way of living, and start it again. That is also an example. Of course, they are young. It's easier to start when you're young, but they started far away from their homes. I was not even a month ago in Greece with Mr. Minister for Foreign Affairs and speaking with refugees, with families, with young people. They got their CVs and they just gave them to me saying, but what do you want? Well, either in Portugal or in that country, we want to go on living. We cannot be waiting forever. It's awful to be waiting without knowing exactly what the future will be. And waiting 1 month, 4 months, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years. And in a way, losing not just that year, those 2 years, but much more than that. Because life goes on. And other young people have their studies with the same age. So in a sense, I was very much touched, rationally, but also moved by the statements, and very simple statements of these 4 younger people. And what we really need now, it's just from this conference to get not just the experience of the past, the Portuguese experience, the experience of some European countries, not all of them, unhappily, but many of them, of other countries, most of them neighboring countries, and then think of our future together. It's easy to do it together than to do it on one own. And in a sense, this conference could be a new start. Could be a new start. I'm a university professor, as the Minister of Foreign Affairs is. Of course, he's a sociologist. You could notice it, the way he spoke. But I must tell you, he's much better in law than most of the lawyers in Portugal. That is very dangerous. A sociologist, that is good as a law professor. And this conference is looking at the past, a way of thanking people that have worked together with President Jorge Sampaio. That's why at the end of my short words, I will ask someone to call, and so that I can decorate some of those personalities. We have many more than that, but some of them will be Her Royal Highness Princess Rim Ali of Jordan, Abdulaziz Saud Al Babten, Iqbal Riza Institute of International Education, Dr. Elena Duma, Deutscher Akademischer Austauschdienst, Carnegie Corporation, New York, and the Arab League. It could be more than those. But those are examples of institutions, of people that really worked with President Jorge Sampaio in this platform. It was the beginning of a long way, long and important way. They must be rewarded. It's a way of pointing out how important was their example for the future. And as the Minister for Foreign Affairs said, the future means the aftermath, the day the wars are over. but means more than that, is working for peace before that moment. People will be able to work in a more efficient way, having their degrees, having studied, having knowledge, having what makes the difference. As a university professor, I'm telling you, at the end of a career, what makes the difference in society is education. It's people, qualification, innovation, science, culture, technology. That makes the difference. While there are wars, to get peace, and after the wars, to rebuild societies, to rebuild nations, to rebuild countries. That, of course, I would be very, very unfair, I must admit, if after rewarding all those personalities, I would not have a very heterodox gesture. But I'm very heterodox. It's well known in Portugal. Well, and the gesture is very simple. I must decorate President George Sampaio. It's hard because he has almost all decorations of the country. But it must be. Yes, of course. Because it's a way of saying thank you. We admire you, we love you, but we trust you. We trust you. You're there, and you'll be there working together with all those institutions and people for peace, for solidarity, for social justice, for knowledge, for science, for culture, for the future. Thank you, President.